How are we doing, guys? Welcome to the Let's Talk podcast. And today we're going to be starting our series on depression. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about what we think depression is and also how we realised that we were depressed.
Yeah, and I think it's worth saying from the get-go that these are our opinions and it's just discussing things that we've experienced through our depression journey.
Yeah, so to get it started, it's quite a broad question, but to you, what do you feel depression is?
I think that is quite a broad question, really. I think it could be described in many different ways to different people, but to me, one of the key ways I describe it is that it felt like there was a second person or version of myself moving into my head. So it was like there was just a constant second voice, if that makes sense.
And so when you say you had this second voice, do you feel it was something that came in quite sudden, or do you think it was something that built up sort of over time?
Well, I think because I started to suffer with depression at such a young age when I was 13, 14, and I don't really remember if it started as strong as it did when it was building up, like when I was older, but throughout the last couple of years, I could definitely say that it was getting a lot more intense and a lot more common because it was just always negative thoughts. This second voice in my head, like to ask you the same question. I know that is a very broad question as well, but what would you say depression is?
I definitely agree with what you said. It definitely felt like a second version or person moved into my head.
Yeah,
And I feel it was something that it was a mental illness that fed on negativity. I feel it was sort of like a parasite that latched itself to me as the host and then used the negativity in my life to feed it, to make it sort of more strong and dominating over myself.
yeah. So would you describe that as like say if you're in a negative situation, do you think your depression would have made it a lot more intense?
Yeah, I think no matter what situation I was in life, whether it was a positive or a negative, it was always sort of looking to learn about me and identify what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and then definitely on the weaknesses, expose them and use it to its own gain, because it'd use me against myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So so it is definitely it's obviously a very like manipulative and crafty mental illness, really, isn't it? Depression.
100%. I think they're two very good words you used. So going off that, could you sort of explain, ways you found it was, say, crafty and manipulative to you?
I think to me, going off some of my experiences, it was very manipulative in the way I thought, like with overthinking, for example. And I think no matter what I could think in my head, it would always manage to manipulate the positive thoughts into negative.
Yeah.
And obviously I have no idea how it does that, but that's like definitely what it felt like to me.
So with that, do you feel that it didn't, in a sense, rush in to start bombarding your mind with these negative thoughts? Do you feel it sort of built up over time, and that part of its craftiness and manipulativeness was that it made you feel or think that these negative thoughts that became more dominant over time were like normal and just how you thought and how your mind worked?
Yeah, so because I was suffering for quite a long time, I kind of just accepted that's how brains are, that's how people are, like not just me, but that's just what happens. Like it was the norm to me.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very a big realization to what I've come over the last few years, is that how like empowering it was over me in terms of that voice in my head.
So with it, obviously, over time, building this power and this voice and, exposing your weaknesses and really working on them. And something I feel and said was that it felt like I'd become the worst version of myself, because I'd felt that my depression had took that worst version, or found all my negatives and so on, and really worked on making that the dominant now version, because it was in control. Did you feel similar when you were going through depression?
Yeah, but a question for you on that is, so when you say it took your worst version of yourself, the bad version of yourself, do you think your good was still present as well?
Definitely, and I think that links back to the, when we both said that it felt like a second person moved in that the second emphasized the second, in that there was I feel the first person who was there, who is me, who was me,
Yeah.
and now thankfully it's starting to become me again, was there, which is the good, normal, depressive free side.
Yeah.
And then the depressing side moved in, and I feel over time, what I realise now reflecting is that my depressive side grew more dominant and stronger over time, and it beat down my good side to the point where I feel it was the majority, say, holder of my mind, or and I feel the good side was definitely always there, but was just very weak, and I felt you could feel every now and then, especially, and every now and then became less and less in the peak of my depression, but I could feel that voice still there fighting, but sadly, it was less dominant in a sense.
And I think going off what you just said, it's like a constant battle in your head then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do just with this second person that we're describing that moved into our heads, it is a just constant battle in your head, and it's like it just doesn't rest.
No, it doesn't. And did you feel that was something you could feel in a sense when you started to maybe become more aware, or even maybe before, was that you could feel this sort of back and forth between the two sides of your mind, the good side and the negative?
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, I can remember on occasion, it's literally that I was speaking to myself, just like, why am I thinking this? Why am I thinking that? Why is that thought coming to my head? Because it was just literally just back and forth constantly with certain things that could, it could be as simple as something. It could be obviously a very important thing I'm thinking about. I don't know, but it was constantly just like, oh, why are you not thinking this? Why are you not thinking that? On the negative side. Then I was like, well, why? No, I want to think this way. And it was just a constant back and forth.
And would you say it got quite frustrating when you couldn't sort of outthink or overpower these negative thoughts?
Yeah, that's when, like, for me, like, I'd get like run down, drained, like, just get like overwhelmed in a sense, and just become just fed up and tired. And that obviously impacted me as a person then as well.
No, definitely, and I agree. And I think going off that, I definitely felt similar, and I feel that I used to sort of sit there some days thinking, like, why can't I feel or think positive? This is my mind. Why am I should be able to control my own mind. And that was something that really, I feel, frustrated me for a while. And when I was going through counselling, something that a counsellor helped explain to me and teach me was that in our minds, 95% of our brain cognitivity is our subconscious, and the other 5% is our conscious. So then when when she taught me this, and then when, even now when I reflect, I realize, these days times I was feeling frustrated about why can't I control my thoughts? Why can't I feel happy? I feel it's because, firstly, nearly all of my mind had been taken over by my depression, but more specifically, nearly all my subconscious had been taken over. And I now feel and understand better that my subconscious is an area of my mind that's, in a sense, not within my control.
Yeah.
And is something, that I can't really feel, but most of my life experiences get stored there because obviously it's the bigger percentage, of our brains. And so then in my consciousness, when I reflect, when I realised, I was feeling negative a lot, I was thinking negative a lot and down, I feel that was majorly because my subconscious was what fed into my conscious, but my subconscious had been overtaken by my depression, so it was only ever, for the most part, going to be pushing these negative thoughts on me.
Yeah, I think that's quite scary, really, because it's so powerful in your subconscious, where you're not really aware of it. So, from my understanding, your consciousness is everything that you can think right now, everything you can do right now, what you can, come up with in your head. But your subconsciousness is like everything in the background, where, you don't have access to, you don't see it. So if, our depression is just sitting there, it's like it's just slowly taking over you, isn't it?
Definitely. And I think, again, that links back to this second person moving in, and it definitely links, and shows how crafty, manipulative it is, in that it moves in, but does it in such a way that I didn't realise straight away. And, then, when I was speaking to the counsellor, she's saying that it's nearly took over. It's like, how the hell did that happen? So going off this, do you feel, for you, was your depression something that just naturally happened, or do you think it was something that came about because of an event in your life?
So my depression started through a life event. It was when I was about 13 and a half and my mum passed away.
Yeah.
I was very close to my mum. But I know, like, I always remember from that day, I just feel like I've felt different. When I look back now, I can't really see how
Yeah,
or what, in a way, how I felt different at that time. But that's where, like my depression stems from.
yeah.
What about yourself?
I'm similar in a sense of it comes from a life events. Mine sort of comes more from multiple, but one is more, say, like dominant than the others, but together they sort of add up to make that. So my main sort of issue and vulnerability was relationships and issues and experiences within there. Also friendships in a similar way, and then also moving around a lot as a child had impacts upon me, and I now realise in a sense that these contribute to my depression forming, and then it twisted things within that to really help power it even more so.
Yeah. God, it is so crafty. Yeah.
It really
I
is.
think it is worth saying as well, from our kind of causes from where our depression stem from, we are going to be covering this in future episodes as well. And then, like, moving on from that section a bit, like, I know we've just described like where our depression has stemmed from in a sense.
Yeah.
Like, do you agree in saying that everyone's depression is different?
100%. I feel, just us talking there shows, we had two very different routes in a sense to becoming depressed, and I think depression is definitely very subjective to people and very personal. And I think that's where some of the challenges lie within trying to figure it out and so on, because it can be so different. And also I feel that ours stemmed from sort of life events, as we say, but I do understand that some people, there's other factors that can influence depression, such as chemical imbalances and things like that. And it is such a very complex mental illness, but it is one that it feels is really being discovered more and more, which I think is amazing.
I completely agree with you. It is amazing how it's becoming a lot more talked about now. And again, yeah, there is just so many different ways it affects people, and it's just great. It's just becoming a lot more open.
Definitely. So going off what you just said there, then, in a sense of it affecting people, how would you say your depression affected you in a sense of, in ways that made you start realizing, okay, there's something isn't right, and then leading to discovering and figuring out you were depressed?
Yeah, I think, God, you got me on the spot. I think when I think back, like the kind of key events or action, should I say, that happened to me to figure out that I was depressed, it was when I started isolating myself in my room.
Yeah.
Because I used to, I love spending time with my family. I'd sit in the living room all every night, every day with them. I could, spend some quality time with them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember, like, as time went on, I was just gradually just isolating myself in my room, and it got to a point where I'd get in and go and sit in my room on my own all night. Like, I would just seek to isolate myself without being aware of it, really.
Is it weird when you sort of reflect on that now? Because obviously, like you say, knowing how much you love spending time with your family, knowing you, I know you're a very active person, so I think that helps show how depression was changing into someone you weren't in that sense. And so with that, was that something you realised quite quickly, or did someone bring it to your attention? And
so my dad actually brought it to my attention. So I think it must have been a couple of months of me doing this, and he actually came in my room and was just like, is everything okay? You're just sitting in your room all the time. And then it was just like one of the moments where I was just like, oh my God.
You sort of take a step back and look in.
I was just like, I didn't think about it until it actually got raised to me.
Do you think you didn't think about it because it just felt like the norm? Again, because the depression was so crafty at how it made you go about that?
Like I say, I think it gradually did it. It wasn't just a sense, boom, I'm going to be spending 7 days, 7 nights a week in my room away from my family. It was like maybe 2 times, and then it was like maybe like 4 times. And then, like you say, towards the end, it was every night.
It just sort of fell into your routine and felt normal. I definitely agree. This isolation was definitely something that I also did, and I used to, I used to cancel plans all the time.
just a bit.
I wouldn't respond to text. I'd make excuses and really seclude myself. So were there any other ones apart from isolation that you felt?
Yeah, so I really struggled with like sleeping and feeling drained all the time. Like I would be just tired no matter what. Like, don't get me wrong, I would only run off about 3 or 4 hours sleep, so I'm bound to be tired. But it was just constant. I couldn't sleep because of the overthinking and the constant battle in my head.
Yeah.
I couldn't, I just remember every day I was just like, I just wanted to sleep, but I couldn't sleep.
So did that make you like mentally drained then, because of obviously like this constant racing in your mind?
Yeah.
And
I wouldn't say it's physically, because I'm not, I do like my exercise, but not that much to be physically.
But in a sense though, did you not feel in a way physically fatigued because you were just that tired? Did you maybe couldn't feel like, I can't bother getting up today, or I ain't got the energy to even make a brew or something, so.
No, yeah, I think with depression as well, for me, it was like, as much as it affected my like mentality, like in terms of making me drained, I feel like my mentality then impacted my, my physical, because like you say, yeah, you just feel sluggish and just, I just can't be bothered moving.
I definitely agree. When my mind, when I reflect now, I was feeling drained, it helps, I feel, show a lot why I was moody and so on, because I just didn't have energy for anything. I was like, can't be bothered. so leading on from that, I know, there's probably many we could talk about, but when you started to realize or feel like there's something not quite right here, what did you do to sort of try and discover and identify what was up with you?
So I wasn't really sure what to do at the time, when I kind of say, I need to look into this a bit more.
Yeah.
And I turned to everyone's best friend, Google. So
the modern day doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I just looked online. I was literally just really being general in terms of what I was searching for. Why am I feeling so drained all the time? Why am I isolating myself? And then, what popped up everywhere was depression. So I started to read. There was like a lot of forums and community forums, and groups that I clicked on and looked through, and it was people sharing like how they're feeling and, maybe what they've been through. And in terms of how they were feeling on some of the forums, I could really relate to them. And I was just like, I feel like that. It wasn't always necessarily the case, though. So that's where I started to get a bit, I feel a bit like this, how this person's feeling, but then this person's really different, but they're also saying, they've got depression. And that's where now I completely understand it. It is different to everyone.
So would you say, when you went on Google, it wasn't something you discovered instantly? It took, a bit of time and research, in a sense, you going on and maybe like ticking 1 or 2 off with some people, but then going on others and you were like, no, nothing. But then someone might say something like, oh my God, like all of them. So did it take, a little bit of time to get there?
Yeah, definitely. And I think like with depression, like before I even, came across that word, I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So I needed to learn about it. I wanted to know what it is, how it affects people. And that was that time where I was just like, I need to know more about this, because I've just never came across it before.
No, definitely. Yeah.
How did you come across?
I was similar in a sense. I think I did sort of consult the internet at points, but not that. I don't feel that was my main source or where I got my main clarity.
Yeah.
I actually had gone through a breakup around 6-7 years ago, and the way it impacted me, it made me impacted me very, very deeply. And I noticed I became sort of like emotionally numb, and I think that something I missed off earlier, that's one of the core issues I felt.
So when you say emotionally numb, what do you mean by that? So
the way I describe it is that I realised that, say someone came to me with good news or something good happened in my life, or, anything positive.
Yeah.
In my mind, most of the time I think, oh, that's nice, or I'm happy for them, or I'm happy for myself. But I wouldn't feel it. I wouldn't feel, excitement in my stomach. I wouldn't feel that the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, or that excitement, the happiness. And then over time, that got worse and worse in a sense. And as I say, when we went through this breakup, I feel the breakup in a sense was the trigger. I feel a lot of things that, in a sense, were the ammo and it contributed to it. And the breakup was just sort of like the final straw in a sense, and pulled the trigger, and my depression just went.
Just real. Would you say, is that when you went into a really down like place?
I think that was probably near rock bottom in a sense. Yeah, I think that was when depression went like, I'm in control now. It's like, here I go.
Yeah. So what did you do when you reached that place?
So when I reached that place, again, at first, because it was a new turf, I was like, what is going on? Because I didn't understand it. I didn't know what was going on. And as I say, I think I maybe looked a little bit on the internet, but then I was like, I felt for myself, I need sort of a medical opinion. So I went to the doctors and spoke to them, and and explained everything I was feeling for the past few weeks and even months and years and so on. And they sat down and discussed with me, and they identified that it potentially was depression. And from that, then they outlined different options, such as like counselling, medication, and gave me pamphlets to go away and read, and just take some time to digest it before planning moving forward. And I know these journeys are things we'll be discussing further in episodes, but for me, my first point of clarity was the doctors.
Okay. I think, even just by us talking about how we come to realise, how we were depressed, it kind of shows there is multiple ways to do that as well.
No, definitely. There's so many different routes. You went online, I went to the doctors. You can, if you feel comfortable, speak to loved ones. There's literally so many options out there. And as we say, in this modern day, thankfully, there's a lot more, I feel, information coming out every day. And the understanding is growing and growing. And it just is a really amazing thing to see.
Yeah. And I think that's, that's a really nice point to kind of just wrap this episode up.
Oh, definitely is, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, guys. If you could give it a like and a share, that would mean a lot. Please don't forget to subscribe and to turn the notifications on so you can keep up to date with any of our future episodes that we release. If you have any comments or thoughts at all on this episode, just please drop them below or on any of our social medias, and we'll try our best to get back to you.
Yeah, and we're available on all social medias under the username @LTPodcastOnline. We're also available on all podcast directories such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. For all our information more, please check out the description below. And as Dan said, thank you very much for listening, guys. We'll catch you in the next episode, and take it easy.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.